Hello, and thank you for attending. We are talking all things staging today. So as we know, staging is a widely used and recognized strategy, an effective technique in our real estate industry. And today we're going to dive into the why and the how. And we've got our staging powerhouses at KW here to join us. So thank you, ladies. Appreciate you being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, share something, how long you've been in the business, and Alaina, start us off.
Hi, my name's Alaina Zieman. I've been in the business officially licensed since 2017. However, my mother is an agent. She's at the TOSA office, so I kind of grew up somewhat in the real estate business. I live in Heartland now, in that area with my family, and design and staging is just one of my passions. It's kind of what my background is in, so this will be fun.
Awesome, thank you. Lindsay.
Lindsey Vebber. I've been licensed for 17 years, and I actually have a little side hustle staging business that I've been doing for 7 years. Live in Whitefish Bay and work out of the North Shore office.
Welcome. Mara.
Mara Krueger. I have been licensed for about 2.5 years now. So this is my third full real estate year. Been in real estate, not with my license, but flipping houses full-time with my husband going on a little over 4 years. So we do some design and stuff for clients and for our flips, obviously, on that side of things. And so I've always just staged my own listings and have always had a passion for that and interior design and all of it. So I feel pretty honored to be here with these other two ladies because I'm the more inexperienced out of the two, I feel like, but it's been super fun for me. So hopefully I can add some value. I'm out of the innovation office and yeah, that's it.
Great. And I didn't even introduce myself, but I'm Sara Jo Dederich. I'm with Keller Williams out of the North Shore office. I've been doing this for 17 years, but just recently learned about the world of staging and how effective it can be for our listings. So that's one of the questions we have. Now more so than ever, listings in the past 2 years have really been able to utilize staging, and want to know kind of your thoughts on why in today's market is it so important to stage? Lindsay, why don't we start with you?
I think the main thing, like big picture, is we are such a visual society. The Instagram, HGTV, Facebook, everything is just so visual and perfect that we see all the time, well, most of the time, on those like platforms. So it's just about setting your listing apart from the competition. Having better photos, getting more showings, getting the buyers in the door, eliminating that hesitation, any buyer hesitation, and having them buy on emotion versus, oh my gosh, I have to do this, I have to do this, kind of distracts them a little bit. So yeah, and just like makes it feel more homey. Vacant homes, I think, sometimes look a little cold and desperate. So yeah, those are all things to see. Personalizing increases the value, I think, to a buyer.
Mara and Alaina, what do you have to say about that?
No, you go.
I totally agree with everything she said. I think the biggest thing for me is for buyers coming in a lot of the time, especially first-time home buyers, they feel really overwhelmed or they can't always picture a space or how they're going to live there. And so I always, when you're on the side with the buyer agent, you can help them picture things sometimes if they're empty. But when you're on the listing side and the seller side and you want to help put your sellers in the best light, you want to make sure that the home is speaks to the buyer and it looks cozy or it feels functional so that they can see themselves living there. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like whenever I walk in and talk with my sellers, like, how do you guys live here? And like, what if we tweaked it so that it attracted, XYZ buyer too? Or have you ever thought of doing this, or, etc. So I think little things like that can broaden, your pool of buyers so that they can see themselves living there is the biggest part, and home staging just hugely helps with that, especially because of what Lindsay said with just how everybody expects things to be like pretty and perfect all the time. So
I absolutely agree. Especially, I love what you said about the functionality, because even sometimes you go into a house that is staged and it doesn't make sense. And so having people picture how they could live there is huge. And then just creating that moment, which is kind of what both said, where even in your own house, I think it's so important to look around and create little vignettes or moments that are pleasing to the eye and just kind of relax you. It allows somebody to enter a house, not look at all the negative things, but their eyes are naturally drawn towards, pretty objects or a clean layout where things feel just nice and relaxed.
Now that's so interesting, all the points that you brought up. And too, I think Lindsay was saying about increasing value. I read a statistic that the National Association of Realtors in 2021 surveyed buyers agents and listing agents, and they found that overall homes that were staged had a 5% increase in offer over homes that were not. I mean, if that's not a reason to get some staging done, I don't know what is.
100%.
On that, there's different levels of staging. How do you decide which home gets which level, and what does that look like? Mara, what are your thoughts on that?
So I sort of take it on a case by case basis. I have never really hired out a stager for any of my clients before. I personally have a storage unit, and I have furniture and regular staging things that I can use depending on the situation. So when I go in for the listing appointment, we kind of walk through the house and we talk about preparation steps, just in general, that I would talk to any seller about. But depending on what they're working with furniture wise, or what their timeline is, like maybe they need to move out next week and the house is going to be vacant, or maybe they need post occupancy and they really need to keep all of their things there. I think when I meet with them, we chat about all those kinds of things so we can figure out how much they really are going to need in terms of staging from myself. So we can determine, like, if I'm going to do kind of like a partial stage and I bring things in to supplement what they already have, or work with their current furniture, or rearrange certain things, or put some things in storage. Or if it's going to be totally vacant, we kind of game plan like which rooms we're going to stage and which ones are going to have the biggest impact and that sort of thing.
Alaina or Lindsay, whoever wants to jump in for the levels.
Oh, Elena's on mute.
It won't be the first time, I promise you. I do exactly pretty much what Mara does. If it's a really big project, I will hire somebody, but usually I'll kind of work out something where I'll ask for the big furniture, sofas, dining room tables, bed. Sometimes, usually most people use blow-up mattresses or even boxes. So that's pretty much how I determine. And a lot of houses, pretty much, even if something's got a decent couch in it, it's so easy to just fluff it up with $100 worth of Target home goods, get the same color, grays, blues, always super neutral. And that's just something that I think every realtor can have in their basement or storage, just a little kit. But I know I'll pass it to Lindsay, because I know her company is really great at what they do, and they do the full service shebang, which is a little bit different from what I do.
Yeah, so for my listings, I provide a staging consultation at minimum, and then determine, like you guys said, what it needs. But then my staging business does provide, full house staging. We recommend paint colors, we recommend lighting, all of that. And so yeah, we have beds, and we can do as little or as large of a stage as needed.
On that note of doing, different levels, what would you say to someone like myself who, I don't have a storage unit like Mara, Lindsay, I don't have a separate business like you. what, Alaina, you kind of touched on it. Can you talk a little bit more, like when you said like fluffing up a couch, or what's a staging kit? How can I do that at a relatively low cost?
Absolutely. And I'll probably have Jack even like write something down. I have a kit for every house, and this is included. So when I go to my listing presentation, there are different levels. If someone needs to do full staging, it's going to cost a little bit more. However, the 5% you brought up is completely factual. In the case where most of the time the overage that they end up getting from their house looking so great pays for the staging and even pays for part or all of the commission in the past year or so. But as far as just a small kit, it's always throw pillows, throw blankets, some neutral artwork on the walls. I'll bring in a large area rug, which is like, I have one that I got on clearance. I have a few just in my basement. I have antique rugs, like Persian rugs, nice pop of reds, florals and dried florals, and then something for scent, which is huge. Not overpowering, like the Glade plugins. No one likes those. They take away so much from when you walk in. It's overwhelming. So like a nice neutral essential oil-based diffuser, or the Reed diffusers are my favorite. Just put them where you put your business cards. So once again, someone walks in, they have that moment, things are smelling good, they're relaxed and then ready to look around. I can put together something typed up to share afterwards too, of just what's in my little kit, which is what I do to every house. I come an hour before photos and I'll fluff it up, no matter what it looks like.
I love that. That would be great to have that. I also love the Reed diffusers right by your business cards. Like, connecting all those things and leaving an impression. That's really smart. Lindsay, any other little tips that you could give for an agent solo that doesn't break the bank for someone?
I think something that's really important to me is attending photo shoots for your listings, because a lot of times, yes, the photographers will do certain things to, clean things up, but if someone's living in the home, you'll have an opportunity to take away, some kid toys or something that was left out. Maybe their house shows really well, but you just want to have an extra layer during that photo shoot, because we all know that photos are so impactful. So that's like a really, really inexpensive way to, it's just your time. Show up to a photo shoot and take things away, less is more, and go room by room with the photographer. And then, let's see.
I love that
think
about
also-
attending the photo shoot.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
I
that's
think it's
just so full
important.
service and something that doesn't cost money, but if you can give that to your clients, like I'll take down the magnets on the fridge for you. So I'm sure they're nervous about photo day, right? So knowing that you're there as a second
Right.
set of eyes.
Definitely. And you just never know, maybe they left some dishes out or something. So yeah, I think, and another thing I just want to say is, like, I think every price point deserves some state. Like, I feel like 99% of homes need staging, especially if they're lived in. And if they're vacant, it's always nice to have the furniture in there to like warm up the space. But I do think that even if it's not $1 million listing, there's some really inexpensive ways to do little bits, like everyone's been saying, to help that seller feel special, like you're hands-on, and help them make the photos look good.
That's wonderful. I love that point of doing it at every level, because every client deserves that. Mara, any tips that these ladies haven't already mentioned that you like to do for a little cost-effective strategy for agents?
I mean, I totally agree with both. It's especially the pictures thing. That's huge. Like, I always attend also. I think the sellers get so, they're so busy, like cleaning and like trying to prep, and they want it to look perfect, but there's always something that gets missed, or they forgot, or there's a bunch of shoes by the door, or they left their wet towel hanging in the bathroom, or who knows what. So, I think that's huge what Lindsay said. Like, it's like a little thing, like you're there for a half hour, an hour, whatever, with a photographer, but it can make all the difference with your photos, and photos are so huge. When I started out, I wasn't even licensed yet. This is when I first started flipping. I staged all of our own houses, and I had nothing. I had no inventory, nothing. And so, I like shopped on Facebook Marketplace, and I like went to like sales or estate sales or like different things that might, you could find cool pieces that maybe weren't all just Target, but they were like less expensive or lightweight that you could bring along with you. And I spent a small amount of money, but I considered it sort of like an investment, right? You get like a few pieces that you can use over the long term if they're neutral, if they blend well with like other colors or what the seller's decor might be or whatever, that you can keep as an investment piece like that. I just kept continuing to build on my inventory over the years, even though I wasn't even an agent at that point and I didn't have a staging business or anything. I was like, how do I do this by myself? And I just stored stuff in my basement or my garage. And so I think depending on how much inventory you really want to have, like that's something you can consider. Like, okay, I can spend $100 at this listing and the next listing I spend another 100, and I just slowly accumulate things that will help me in the long-term span of my career. And I'll have a bigger inventory to help, or stage bigger houses or, depending on what you need. Or if you have 2 listings at the same time, that helps too, because then you have some that you can take at both different places. So I think just not immediately feeling like, oh, this is so overwhelming, like take it in pieces and like, just think of it more so as an investment, and that you'll slowly get more and more. You don't have to buy everything all at once or really expensive things all at once. You can thrift or go to Target. So, I mean, I think that's a good start, or a good way to start.
I love that. I mean, I didn't even think about it like that. I always thought of it like cost, but it's an investment, just like anything else in your business. So yeah, way to put that around. That definitely gives a different perspective on it.
You can write most of it off if you keep.
Brilliant.
Lots of write-offs.
I'm gonna flip it to Lindsay. What are the pros, both sides of it, as an agent staging themselves or to hire a stager? I know we sometimes get in that limbo, at least I do, like at what point can I take this here, or do I need to hire a stager? How, let's hear the benefits of both from your perspective.
I think if the agent's doing it themselves, saving money for them or the seller, and sort of having like control over the process. But those are the only things I could really think of. But hiring a stager, I think I think a lot of people have me come in because they want to maintain that relationship with their client as like client realtor, not stager, cleaner, realtor, clients. Like you don't want to become the stager versus the agent. And I think that's why a lot of people reach out to me, because it's we have tough conversations sometimes for those staging consultations, and telling people to put away their art or personalized items is very difficult. I think sometimes you don't want that resentment between the client and the agent, if there is any. Will be the bad guy while you be the good guy. And sometimes, telling somebody to make updates to their house that they don't really want to spend the money on, and maybe their agent saying it, but we're an extra layer telling them to do that as well. So it kind of like it speaks to them more, hearing it from 2 people. Yeah, those are my main. And then like, again, tough conversations if there's smells in the house or like major things that they need to do, just having those difficult conversations with them.
I think that would feel good too for the agent to have kind of an ally to say, okay, I know you're going in, here's some of my concerns from your professional opinion, what do you think? And then just, yeah, that buffer, that's nice. Mm-hmm. Mara, what are your thoughts on some pros for each side?
I think she said it really well, honestly. I think I mentioned earlier, I haven't needed to in any of my cases so far. I mean, I've only been licensed for 2.5 years, so I haven't run into it yet where I've run into the difficult conversations, or at least we've kept it comfortable enough so far. But I'm sure someday it'll happen. And I could for sure see the value add with bringing in kind of like an expert or a consultant to say, hey, like, let's see what they say. You know, you can make a decision if you want me to stage, if you want her to stage, or take her recommendations, etc. I think that's a huge value add for sure.
Anything else to add to that, Alaina?
I'm kind of going to go a little bit on the opposite and say that I've had a lot of instances, or I shouldn't say a lot. There's been 3 that I can remember, large houses that they've interviewed multiple agents and even talked to staging companies, and they just suggested way too much. And the price was crazy, and they wanted so much paint and so many things done that when I came in looking over everything, I'm thinking, like, looking around, you absolutely don't have to do this, and you can still be in a fantastic position. Yes, like, would white paint, you know, versus like a dark gray look better? Yeah, but someone at the end of the day is going to buy it, and they also might want to paint and choose their own color, and we can choose things that work with that color instead of changing everything and paying thousands of dollars for a painter on top of it. So I do agree. Some instances there are colors that will not work, and there is really bad artwork. Things need to come down, a lot of personal items, and that can be a tough conversation. I think it's good to start those conversations at your listing appointment before you even have it, and say, you know, what I like to do is be there for photos. I like to do light staging, and then I recap everything in the list. Now, what to do before you're ready? Maybe start putting stuff away. You're moving, so that's a great time to declutter, take artwork down, and then start fresh. But I do really think that, especially the last few years, now things might be a little bit different for sellers, but you don't have to do the maximum to make a maximum impact financially, or just to have it look fantastic. Photos play huge into this. You can have a house staged and get bad photos done, and people aren't going to show up because the photos kill it, essentially. So if they got there in person, and we all have those, you go in person, you're like, this house, the photos did not do it justice. And it can be staged or look nice, but having somebody that understands angles and don't do too much with the high contrast and the super wide angle, we want it to look realistic. I like mine to almost look more editorial, even if the house doesn't look editorial, just more natural. So there's not big surprises.
Great, love that. You touched on it a little bit, but you know, we talk about costs of staging. Who's paying for that? Are you paying for that? Is the seller paying for that? How do you work out that cost, and what does that conversation look like?
Personally, I break things down on listing appointments line by line. So I cap mine where if I can do it on my own and it's like a smaller gig and I do have some furniture, it's included in my commission. And that is something that I love to offer to my clients. And it doesn't take an obscene amount of my time. And it gives me, or anybody, I think, an advantage in competition. If it's a rather large house or a bigger project and I have to bring in an outside, depending on the situation, I have paid for it myself. Sometimes if it's something that the seller kind of wants done on their own too, then they'll end up paying for it. But most of the time when you get it staged, even if I'm paying it for it myself, my commission will go up based on the sale price going up. And same with the seller. It ends up paying for itself most of the time. And if you even look at other listings like in MLS that have expired and then gone back up again with staging and new things done, and the price seems to kind of fix itself, anyone can see that. So it's good way to show your seller that it's effective. And most of the time, can't guarantee, but if you listen to us and price it well, you can end up having it paid for in itself.
Mara, Lindsay, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I include it with my listings as well. And since I have my business as like a resource, it's kind of easy for me. But Any agents that I stage for, it really depends on the situation though, how they work it. Sometimes the seller's paying for it. I have a handful of agents that I stage for and they always pay for it. So it really just depends on how much we're doing and then who initiated that conversation, and probably on the back end, which I don't get involved with, what the commission is maybe as well, but for the most part, it's a mix of the two.
Mara, anything?
Yeah, same. I include it with my listings. So, and I kind of list it out as like a big value add because we are a full service broker. And that is something that we include where a lot of, flat fee or someone else may not offer anything even close to something like that. And to Alaina's point, I drive home a lot, like in our listing consults, that it almost always pays for itself and then some, especially in this market. Obviously that could change depending on how the market goes. But like one of my last listings that I had, it sold for 12% more than what we listed it at. And so they were thrilled. And there was a lot of prep that we did. Like there was some paint, the homeowners did it themselves. So, there are ways, like if they're willing to put in the work themselves, like swapping some light fixtures. I always tell them to clean like they've never cleaned before. And I think that like is an underrated message. And I'm sure every real estate agent tells their clients that, but I'm like, no, seriously, clean like you've never cleaned before. And once it's clean and decluttered and you can get some cute, like cozy staging in there, it makes such a huge difference. And not even just from the buyers coming through. I personally think it helps a lot with appraisals too. You could have the most beautiful house that was literally just built and you put in staging and it looks more expensive. So I think that there's value behind that. And I think that it makes a huge difference. And if you can explain that to your clients, you're good.
I should mention, if anyone has questions while we're talking, feel free to drop it into the chat and we'll catch those on the end. Here's one that comes up and I'm always kind of stuck here. What happens when you go to list a home and you're like, we need so much for repairs? I was thinking staging and I'm coming across this and this. Do I just forgo the staging, worry about repairs? Do I do a combination? Talk to me about, what does that conversation look like with clients? Go ahead, Mara.
So like I said before, I always include the staging in my commission. So they really, at least so far, I have never asked them to pay or charge them for that. If it was a huge house where I just didn't have the things I needed to, and we needed to hire an outside stager because we just needed more furniture, that would be a different story maybe. But because of that, if there are needed repairs, the seller has always paid for that. And we've just worked out to the point of what's going to help add value to your house, and that's going to help sell your house, and what those costs are going to look like. And some people may be more willing to do more than others. But we kind of make a priority list of like, what's the most important, like what has to get done. Like what's a problem, like what's a defect, like you need to fix that. I'm sorry, there's no way around it. And like what's some other cosmetic stuff that maybe we can like get creative or work around. But the sellers have always paid for the defect side. And then I always supplement with the staging on my end.
Okay, so really making it, piecemealing it, and being a problem solver and figuring out a solution.
Yeah.
Lindsay, what are your thoughts when a home needs repairs and staging, and how do you prioritize things?
So yeah, as Mara said, I also include staging, so that's just always there for me. But if it was a give or take, I think you just like make a wish list item or list for your clients, and okay, yep, prioritize what's the most important, and then kind of work from there. If they're not willing to do anything, I think it still is beneficial to stage just to like make it look as current as possible, because buyers may be thinking, okay, like it's a little bit outdated, but with, the right like styling and furniture, I can make it look cute for now until I can make these repairs. Or so, I mean, obviously if it's something significant that is like really bad, like the carpet's like really, really stained, that is maybe a non-negotiable when I'm speaking with clients. But if it's just like outdated, I think staging is a way of making it look more current, and just kind of not even dealing with those things and let the buyer take it on.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I can see, when I'm taking buyers through, if they see not staged and a list of repairs, it's so daunting. So to at least see like some semblance of, okay, I would live like this, and like we can tackle that at some point. That's got to add a ton of value. Anything else to add to that, Alaina?
Yeah, I'm doing a house right now coming up where I just went there, and it needs a significant amount of like small things. Like it's built in the 90s, like broken faucet, the roof is near the end of its life. There's a list of things that'll definitely be taken care of and then disclosed, but we're still gonna stage it 100%. I like I don't know, the saying, like, you can't put lipstick on a pig. You absolutely can. And honestly, a lot of the times they need some lipstick at some of these houses, and it does make a difference. And as agents, that's what we're promising, and our job is to make, the most money for our sellers, and that's how we're going to do it. But as long as they're disclosing, or the agent's disclosing, if something is, I've staged some kind of gross houses that needed love, but it still helps somebody, picture what it could be once everything was fixed or updated.
Great. We'll stick with you, Alaina, for the next question. When you ladies are going into these homes, I can only imagine that you're looking at a final list price and factoring in the staging and the complete package. What do you do if a seller, and you come across this and they are adamant that my house doesn't need staging? What do you do then? Do you back it out then and give them a different list price? I mean, how does that work, and how do you overcome that objection and listing strategy for price?
So when I recap, after I go into a house for a listing appointment, I don't bring anything. I say, I'm going to email you something tonight. It's something you can look back on. It's a listing recap. It's a list of things I think you could do. It's the price I would list your house at today, because if they're even going to be listing in 3 months, the comps are going to change. So I say, if you do what I tell you on this list here, even some of it, we can reevaluate that price once it's time. If we don't have time, or if you don't want to do it, then here's that price. And I've had this situation where it was like clearly a house that needed to be bought by a flipper or an estate where things are a little iffy. And even in that case, if it's totally empty and they don't want anything brought in, I'll throw on a virtual stage. I'm just really nitpicky on who does those and how realistic it can look. But just so let's see what it looks like bare and empty. Show that picture, but then also just say digitally staged, but then you can see what it could look like. Most of the time, they'll just let me do what I want, and I'll be there for the photos. Even like Mara said, always there for photos, always there early, and then just tweak little things, putting away the coffee maker, putting away the toaster, clearing off the counter, adding a bowl of even fake lemons. It goes such a long way, and it takes literally 5 minutes of our time. So those things I'll do just for the photos and say, hey, if you can leave it there, that's great for showings. If not, it's fine too. We'll get people in the house based on those photos.
Lindsay, what are your thoughts on pricing if a seller says no staging?
I think that the pricing should always be on the comps, and it shouldn't be, it's a marketing tool. So I think staging a home is going to affect the sale price in the end, but it should not affect the marketing price, in my opinion. So yeah, inflating the price for staging can be a slippery slope if you're not aligning yourself with the comps.
Brilliant.
But for defense, that's what I want to say, not just staging, but if they're fixing like roof and stuff like that too, and then the staging, that's when I say then we can reevaluate the price.
Got it.
As
Sure.
Makes sense. Mara, any thoughts on pricing with or without staging?
Yeah, I totally agree about the comp thing. And I don't really change it depending on staging. I just more so explain, like, the more we do to prep your house and make it beautiful, the higher likelihood you're going to have of it going higher or people fighting over it, basically. So, really the comps should still dictate what the house is worth and where it should sit in the market. I have not had anybody fight me on staging. I mean, since I'm providing it and it's essentially free. I mean, why would your seller not want to get the most money possible? Could it happen? And it depends on the situation too. Like if it's a house that's just really deteriorated and needs to be flipped or something, that's different. And I have not had to sell. I probably would have bought it myself. But,
Yeah.
so I haven't had to sell any of those, unfortunately, but I mean, that could happen someday. I don't know. But so far, I mean, really, everybody is like so grateful and thankful. Like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see it staged, or I can't wait to see the photos. They're excited to see their house kind of like prettied up. So, I mean, almost most all sellers, I feel like, are always pretty proud of their houses. So to see it like in their like glamour shots, basically, I think they're usually pretty happy about that. So I haven't really had much pushback on that, but to Lindsay's point, yeah, I think that it should sit where it sits.
I like that. Yeah, clearly you're really good at explaining your value proposition, and you all are very clear and concise with your communication up front with sellers. And I think that's probably why you don't get that pushback that maybe other agents might experience. I have so many notes from this session. I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I want Alaina's kit. I'm going to make that and keep it in my trunk if I can. Do we have any questions in the chat? I did not check that. Ladies, I don't think we have anything, but I'm sure people might want to reach out to you with some questions they have later.
I got a question if you don't mind. Actually, quite a few, because my wife will tell you I don't have a design eye, so I would certainly hire out staging. What is like an expected cost range? Say like the average price is a $300,000 house with 2,000 square feet, like for a full staging gig. What's something like that expected to cost? Like if I include that.
Good question. So just an example of how I kind of do my fee, as like a 300,000, it doesn't really matter actually what the house costs.
Sure.
I go by room.
Okay.
So essentially I include like 2 rooms for clients, at a minimum cost of anywhere from like $1,900 to $2,000. And then any room after that is typically $350 to $500 per room. And then I do have like a monthly rental fee that goes into play after a couple of months. So if that helps you at all, I typically recommend like the living room to be staged, the dining room, any living spaces, family room, and then master, I think would probably be the next most important. And then bedrooms, I usually don't really recommend staging them unless they're like a weird size bedroom. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have a couple of random things that I just thought of that doesn't really apply to that question, but when I think of staging, and Alaina kind of brought this up, like when I said I always want to see how the house functions. Sometimes you'll see, I'm sure everybody's seen this, where you like look at the listing photos on MLS and there's like a living room with 2 dining chairs just by themselves, like in the living room. I just would never recommend doing something like that. I just don't think that it adds any value to the house. So I would make sure that the house like looks like it's actually a way that somebody would live in it. I wouldn't just throw things in a room just to throw things in a room necessarily. I think that makes a huge, huge difference. So, and then also one huge thing that I always try to do is like, if a house is kind of like quirky or it has like weird spaces, those are like ideal times to try to stage it, because so many buyers are like, oh my goodness, what in the world do I do with this weird corner? It's completely useless. But maybe you can make it like a reading nook for your kids, or you can stage it in a way that adds value. I think little pieces like that make a big difference. And it could cost like very little, like if it's a small little section or something. So those are just totally random thoughts, but thought I'd throw them in there.
My only suggestion to Sheridan, or to anyone hiring an outside company, Lindsay's company is great and they have a really good portfolio. But make sure that you are looking, because there are some that are, you can tell they're staged. Like I've gone into houses where there's a pot on the stove with noodles in it, but there's no water, and that's like part of the staging, and that is absurd. Like little things like that just doesn't need to happen, you know? And so that's why it's important, because just like not everyone should be a real estate agent, not everyone should be a stager or knows what they're doing. So make sure you're looking at that portfolio. And Lindsay, you should share to your company something in the group or something like that too, so people can look through, because I think that a lot of agents can utilize that.
Definitely, I will.
Yeah, another question I have, you guys mentioned paint. So does a stager typically suggest that the owner needs to paint, or is that typically the agent? And then is that where you draw the line of where you take on the cost? Because that's kind of a repair. I feel like you wouldn't pay for painting for the house, right?
No, I think
Right.
if something's like a bright orange, and if it's a kid's room, a lot of times who cares? If like the living room is like a very deep or loud color, or it's just bad paint, like maybe they had some things that ruined the wall, it's a suggestion. And I think when you bring in an outside company, they make those suggestions, and then colors. You can Google the top 5 neutral whites or grays on Sherwin-Williams as well. And if something's loud, you can suggest, hey, if you're into it, you could get some painting done. It could increase, you know, the resale value or the overage price. But like Lindsay was saying, it's nice sometimes to have a neutral party to do that. So if you say, I want to bring in a stager and see what they suggest, but sometimes the seller will get offended then, because they're thinking, well, I have to get it staged and get all this painted. So I like bringing that up personally right away if something's very loud and aggressive.
Okay. But you don't pay for that, right? That would be.
I don't pay for the painters.
Right.
Can I bring something up quick just to whoever's still around? Jackie, I want you to pull up, speaking of paint, I want you to pull up the photos I sent you. I had a listing that I got that expired once prior with a different agent. The paint was bad. The floors were bad. It was sitting, it wasn't selling. The seller had absolutely no time to do any repairs. And frankly, he was bleeding money. So I took the house and basically had to work with the brightest color. But I want to show where even just adding some furniture and some pillows and keeping the things that aren't great can make a huge difference, and photography. So I sent these to Jackie. She's going to pull them up.
Yep, just give me 1 second to share my screen here. This should work. Let's see. Share. One system security. All right, I have some security issues here. Give me 1 sec.
Mara or Lindsay, do you have anything to say while she's getting it?
One other thing I wanted to add is You could also create like a checklist of prepping your home for sale and put some of these things on there. And there, it's like a second layer of like telling them, yeah, you should neutralize your house, like paint colors, anything that's, dark or offensive. No. Or just like, like some of the yellow, I feel like people use a lot of yellow in their houses and it just like photographs so terribly. But yeah, just like neutralizing your house, like the whites, grays, greige, cleaning checklist, all those, and like getting down to the specific details and saying like, okay, here's your guide on everything that you need to do. Then it's maybe not as difficult of a conversation because it's written out as them preparing their house. Just wanted to add that.
And also because you can say like, I give this to every seller, you know what I mean? So they don't feel like they're being singled out. Because I do the same thing, like the checklist is so helpful. And then it starts the conversation when you give it to them or when you meet with them that first time. I agree with you on that.
I think too, the things that we have now in the print shop, like the listing handbook that I know like Britton at my office made an awesome one for me. There is like a nice one in there as well that they do have, which I didn't really feel like I needed to add much of it to.
Something else that I feel like we really didn't talk about is greenery, like plants. Like none of us really mentioned that, but when you're starting out, it's probably easier to do like faux stuff, but I always try to add that in there.
Jackie's got the pictures up. Okay, so obviously the giant leather couches before and the red paint. And what's funny was that almost everyone that was coming in said it needs paint so bad and floors. And when I took it over and we didn't have time, we literally just pulled, as you can see with the blues and pulling a lot of those reds back in and adding, just like Mara just said, greenery, just things that catch your eye. People all of a sudden started complimenting the red paint. Where he said, everyone wants me to paint. And all of a sudden agents were going through and saying, I actually really like that red paint. It's really like eye catching. And really it was, a late 2000s color and it was kind of done poorly in some areas, but it just helped you envision it. And same with the kitchen in the next was the green with the red and the dark, and it just wasn't working. So before it was fine, you just couldn't look past, like every time I look at the photo, my eye was drawn to the big brown furniture. I couldn't really see beyond that. The cabinets were, builder grade. But by adding in just fresh little things that when you'd go in there, especially in person, it honestly felt like a cool place to hang out versus before you just felt like you were intruding on someone else's area and you'd want to change so much right away. And I know everyone has a million of these photos, but this was just one of my favorite. And this was a hard sell. But with working with what he had with floors that need to be refinished, paint that probably could use updating, it went well. Thank you, Jackie, for doing that.
Was that house in the 3rd ward?
Yeah,
It
did you
looked-
show it?
But it looks like a 141 North unit.
Oh, it's similar. This was I've sold a lot in this building. This is I think this is Parts House Loft.
Parts House, yeah.
215 Maple.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so the funny thing about that is that I showed that the befores.
Really?
And then my client sent it to me. They're like, can we go see this one? I'm like, we already saw it. Yeah. And what I love that you did there is because at Parts House, that's very common to have that red color because a lot of people matched it to the window trim.
Yes, that trim.
So I too always think like, we got to get rid of this color. We got to get rid of this color. It's just a Parts House color. And that's so phenomenal. And I love the way you made a little nook there too. I showed it before and after and yeah, brilliant.
I brought in one of my friends for the large furniture in that piece too. I needed a couch, but I didn't do anything to the downstairs. And that I actually did. I did like a little bench and a plant.
Right. Yeah.
But just shows like, and he said, I can't pay for it and I can't paint and the floors need to be refinished and I'm not doing those either. So no one brought it up. Ended up selling after it sat for months prior. So I was happy for the seller there.
It's a great success story.
Mhm.
I had another question too. What is your typical time frame from like your listing appointment once you get the deal to like allow for staging, like the staging consultation and then photography before you go live?
Lindsay, maybe for like a large scale company.
It really just depends on what needs to be done. But typically I'll have agents reach out to me after they go on a listing appointment, and they'll get me in at least just so that they know what the timeline is, and they kind of base it on what I tell the seller.
Okay.
And what we have in our inventory.
For a quick one, Sheridan, like, for example, I just got notice last night that my seller wants to list earlier now. I'm listing in a week. So I'm going there at noon on Tuesday. The photos will be at 3. So I'm just packing up the little things that I have and like using her existing furniture. She's got a nice neutral gray couch. We're gonna add those little kit things like throw blanket, pillows. She did replace some light fixtures, and that's a huge thing that a lot of stagers do recommend. And you can send them even electrician to change it, and then links to even Amazon lighting, which makes such a difference.
Mhm. Yeah, similar. Like I had a condo that she basically reached out to me and she wanted to list like the next week. And it was already really cute, but I just came in with some plants. Like she didn't have any greenery anywhere. And greenery always just like breaks up a space and makes it feel homier. So if you have faux greens, awesome. Otherwise, like some fresh flowers on the counter for pictures always like makes an impact, I feel like. If they can't take care of them, obviously, like have them toss them before showings start, but at least for pictures, I think it makes a difference sometimes. And then like I just came like, yeah, like Alaina said, like an hour or two before photos. And then we just went through photos. You're there already. You can move things around if you need to. But then like on another one, like I have right now, like I just met with them last week, and it's like a family who's clearing out for their parent, and there's some work that needs to be done. So like there's painting that needs to be done, and they're going to have some light fixtures swapped. But we came up at the listing appointment, we came up with a timeline, like, okay, need to clear out all of the stuff still. So they're like, I think we can have that done in 2 weeks. And then they're like, we can have the light fixtures installed this day. And then I got them a painter, and they called the painter and said, painter scheduled for this day. And so then after, once we kind of had some of those things carved out, we're like, okay, staging will happen this week, assuming everything goes as planned. And then that's when you can kind of figure out pictures and everything else. So that's kind of how I tackle it. We come up with like a tentative timeline at that first listing appointment based on usually, in my experience, at least, the seller's hopeful timeline. Like they wanted to sell ideally within the next 2 months, well before the holidays got started. So, yeah.
Okay.
And Sheridan, something, a lot of like, I don't know, sometimes I don't want to say like all men, some men have really great eyes for design. Like you said, bringing in even your wife, if she would go to their target with you and help you put together a little kit, or a lot of staging companies will offer just like a partial where they can go in a room and do plants and throw pillows, and you save a lot of money doing that too, if it's just not your thing, because it's certainly not, you know, for everybody. And you can't, some people just, you know, have an eye, and some people just, they don't, but they're still really, really good agents.
Yeah. Yeah. Bringing my wife to Target's dangerous.
It's an investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a write-off.
Yeah, I guess.
This is Tracy Lukic. I just have a question on staging companies, and if they get involved with, like, if you have a bathroom that you think should have some updates done to it, like not a full renovation, but maybe some new flooring, new fixtures, new hardware, that type of thing. Do staging companies also help with that and manage that project, or do you typically just provide vendors and things to your client directly and have them work with the vendors?
Yeah, I'll go. I don't get involved with that just because of the time and finding contractors and
Yeah.
things like that. Usually I go to the agent for their resources because those are their contacts. And then, but I will help with like picking out any selections just to, you know, help the seller minimize their decision making. And you don't want them to pick something that's not gonna, you know, kind of appeal to the masses. So
Yeah.
I do make suggestions for that.
I try and usually work with what they have and add like towels and other things because similar to paint, I feel like depending, you know, like how things are priced and a lot of people buying the house are probably going to want to do a bathroom eventually and make their own selections unless they're, I guess, very generic. But I know Amara should talk because this is half of what she does is just incredible renovations. So she probably has more knowledge for her people on that.
We do a lot of renovating. Yeah, I don't get involved in terms of the real estate side. Like if there's renovating to be had before listing, like I don't do any of the project management for that. I have a problem with like trying to be too helpful sometimes and it can get very overwhelming and we're all busy. So sometimes you just have to say no. And I've learned to draw the line there. So to Lindsay's point, how she said that she'll help pick out fixtures, totally do that. I will send light fixtures. I'll send like if they need to swap sink fixtures or things like that, I'm happy to send fixtures and links or materials that might be good swaps if it makes sense. Everything is so case by case. It just kind of depends because staging or making the house look good in photos, etc. Like it could be cute enough where somebody is like, oh, I love it. And now I can put my own touches on it. And there's always like a weird fine line between like whether it's worth replacing or really doing a cheap renovation or like throwing in LVP over a bathroom, like a nice bathroom floor tile because some of it was chipped or something. Somebody might not like that. So it really just depends on the situation. But in terms of like actual like project management of a small scale renovation like that, or just updates, I guess I should say, prior to listing, I do not do the project management. I definitely send out recommendations and people that could help them get it done. And I'll help them pick fixtures, kind of like how Lindsay said, but that's about it.
Thank you. That's helpful.
You know what? I thought of another one. This is my last one. I promise.
Bring it.
So if you're hiring out a stager, do you generally attend that yourself as well? I know you mentioned going to the photos to make sure everything's lined, but for staging, do you attend?
Have and have not. Depends on who's coming. Like if I need someone for furniture, then no, usually I let them kind of go in, but especially for me, like, I don't know, having my own ideas and liking a lot of design, I don't want to like step on anyone's toes at that point. So I'll say that stager will come in before and just look around and answer any of your questions. And then they'll kind of recap everything for you afterwards too.
Okay.
But Lindsay, when you go, are the agents usually present?
No, I typically tell the agent that they should not be there, nor the seller. Just so that like we go in and we're like kind of tornadoes and just kind of do our thing and we're in and out of there as fast as we can be. So it's just easier when the seller's not there because you have to talk to them and explain what you're doing. And so it's just easier for us to kind of get in and out.
That's for the installation, right?
Yeah.
For the console, are they there?
I typically like when the agent is there just so everyone's hearing the conversation. But then I always the recap, like proposal and what we talked about and what the seller should be doing in an email.
That's good.
Sometimes I like to, and I think Lindsay brought it up, you know, because of the buffer, I don't like to attend the staging consult if I talk to the stager beforehand, because I know what they're gonna go in there and say, and I have a bad habit of opening up my mouth. And it's like, stay in my lane, I am not the stager. And so, you know, I always want to make the seller feel good, so the stager will be doing their job, and I'm kind of like siding with the seller, even though like I don't agree with what they're saying. So I think it depends too on the agent. Like, I know myself, I should leave it to you ladies, the professionals, because you'll do better without me there. So, and obviously just trust the stager, that they're going to have a good working relationship with your client. I think it's important, but maybe it depends on the agent too. Anybody else have any questions? Check the chat quick. Wow, this was good. Ladies, anything else, last thoughts before we wrap up?
Just, I want to stress to every single agent to go to the listing photos, whether you're staging or not. It makes a difference no matter what. Even if you're busy, carve out 30 minutes.
Agreed, good tip. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye.